Good afternoon, everyone. We will now begin the July 12th, 2023 Taxicab Advisory Committee meeting. Let's begin with the roll call.
Please go ahead and unmute your mics when I call you so that we get the record when you say present. Okay, so Shawnila Rivera,
Present.
Abel Seifu,
Present.
Agustin Holoyan,
Here, present.
Alfred Banks. Mr. Banks, could you make sure to unmute your microphone?
Present.
Thank you. Okay. Akbar Majid,
I'm here.
Antonio Hueso,
Present.
David Taysom, George Abraham, Karen Igareda, Louis Vasquez,
Present.
Mark Nichols, no, Michael Anderson,
Present.
Margot Tangwe,
Present.
Michael Trimble, Micheline Sullivan, Mikhail Hussein, no, Peter Zishi,
Here.
Zidu Girma.
All right. With a quorum here, let's move to agenda item 2, which is approval of the minutes of the May 24th, 2023 meeting. I'll go ahead and move approval of those minutes for the second. The second from Mr. Zichi. So we got a motion for myself and second from Mr. Zichi to approve the minutes from May 24th, 2023. Is there any public comment on this?
No public comments.
All right. Then with that, and seeing no requests to speak to this item, let's go ahead and call the roll. Oh, we can
We
do
just did call.
for the vote.
Oh, for the vote.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Shawnila Rivera,
Yes.
Abel Seifu,
Yes.
Agustin Holoyan,
Yes.
Alfred Banks, Akbar Majid,
Yes.
Antonio Hueso,
Yes.
and then Louis Vasquez,
Yes.
Margot Tangwe,
Yes.
Peter Zishi.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. All right. Let's move to agenda item 3, non-agenda public comment. We
No,
don't have any. All right. Moving right along. Lenny, would you like to introduce agenda item 4?
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Agenda number 4, advertisement opportunities for taxicabs at the San Diego Airport. Based on data provided by the San Diego Airport, ground transportation trips have resumed to pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels. 75% of the MTS permitted taxicabs regularly operate out of the San Diego Airport. At the request of our chair, Shawnila Rivera, for hire vehicle administration, reviewed marketing opportunities within and outside the airport to better advertise taxicabs as an available transportation provider. For hire vehicle administration, reached out to the following advertisement media vendors at the airport: Clear Channel Airports, which handles in-terminal digital networks, static displays, column and wall wraps, floor exhibits, and workstation advertisement. Airport Television handles television advertisement placed on whole room screens throughout the airport. And Brochure Rack, which is the company that handles brochures and magazine racks for free visitor information at 5 passenger arrival areas. And I also had the pleasure of meeting with some of our TAC members who met with us at the airport. We had a tour of, we surveyed, I should say, Terminal 1 and Terminal 2 to check out what possibilities were there in terms of possible advertisement at the taxicab stands, in terms of kiosks or signs or A-frames. And that being said, I would like to introduce Ron Corbin, account manager for Clear Channel, who is joining us remotely, and they will provide the committee with detailed information on advertisement opportunities handled by Clear Channel.
Hey, thanks, Lenny, for the introduction. Let me know when I have remote access to.
Go ahead, Mr. Corbin.
Okay. Okay, so I tap on the screen. There we go. Just let me figure this out for a second. Okay, great. Thanks for having me, everybody. Just a little bit about me. I am in Oakland right now. I work with Clear Channel Airports as a regional account executive, meaning I work with companies and organizations such as yours. My responsibility is to bring in local companies as opposed to going after the Lyfts and Ubers of the world. So it'll be a great opportunity to kind of bring you guys into the airport if you find it feasible for the Taxicab. And I'm also a fan. When I'm like 56 years old, when I get to the airport, I really don't want to mess around with a app. And I go right over to where your airports are located, your taxis are located at the airport, jump in and go to my hotel when I don't rent a car. So I appreciate your service. Just a little about Clear Channel Airports. We've been around for about 45 years, as the screen says. We pretty much have about 52% of the traffic that goes through airports in the United States. If you think about that, 4th of July, we had about 3 million people go through the airport and in one day. And so about 3 million people on one day of that weekend, we have half of that and are going through our airports. We're all over the country. And so we know how to fully support you guys in San Diego. We won the award for working with San Diego in 2018 from JC Deco, and the airport's not looking back. And this slide just shows you a little bit about our airport audience, how they go about engaging with our different formats. This is on the left. You can see it's a large LCD screen that's in the Terminal 2. What Lenny asked me to do was ask me to bring in some information on what rideshare has done. So as you can see in that photograph, Lyft. That is a Lyft ad that is on our video wall, Arrivals Network. This is a quick map of where we are located throughout the country and our coverage. And this gets into a little bit more about ride sharing. 78% of frequent flyers find it valuable to have info on rideshare upon landing. That way they don't have to shuffle and looking for it. We can incorporate that into the airport for taxicabs. And my thoughts, and with discussing with Lenny, would be on our digital networks. The flexibility of that would be you could change out the ads monthly, quarterly, if you wanted to put in something regarding the holidays, if you want to put in something regarding specials, if you want to put in some directions as far as, hey, you can find us here, to direct folks to taxicabs. And with that opportunity, they'll say, I see the taxicabs as I'm coming through my gates. I see the taxicab ads at the airport. Why don't I want to jump in a cab right now, rather than wait 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes for to hook up with an Uber or Lyft driver. And you can see, as far as with our clients, you can see the frequent flyers and the business frequent flyers. We like to divide that. Frequent flyers are folks that 3 or more trips in the past year, and business frequent flyers, you can see the stats there. The big number that jumps out for me on this page is that 340% more likely business frequent flyers are more likely to have ridden a taxicab in the past 2 weeks. And you can see in frequent flyers, it's about 114% more likely. That's huge. And I think the difference between the 14 and the business frequent flyer needs to get where he wants to get to. He can't be late for a meeting. He's probably more mature. She's probably more mature. So we have a tendency that we rode in cabs before Uber and Lyft existed. So it makes more sense for us to jump in a cab and go somewhere than wait around for Lyft. if we know where to find them and the possibility is there. This is a little bit about tourism and as a captive audience. QR codes are great. If your QR code has, somebody could snap that at, say, one of the video screens at Backclaim, and that QR code directs them to a landing page that shows them a map of where the taxi cabs are to be found at SAM. Folks can just take a look at that. That's where I find the cabs. I'll go there and may cut into a lot of that Lyft and Uber traffic that's out there. Now, these are the examples, just some thought starters to see what Uber and Lyft has done out at airports. Now, typically, we have set rates for our digital networks, but there's an opportunity, depending on what the airport allows, to do kind of bigger kind of, bigger kind of advertisements and campaigns out of the airport. And it depends, that all depends on rate and the length of time that we're going to be out there. So as you can see here, this is what Lyft has done in the past. You can see Dulles Airport. The middle picture is what they've done in San Diego. That's on one of our video walls in either Terminal 1 or Terminal 2. And you can see their presence and what they've done throughout different airports. And it's because they find value. People want to get, most airports are pretty big. The majority of people out there are going to jump into some kind of a ride share or taxi. They just, airports, the bigger they get, the more likely folks aren't going to come and pick them up at the airport. San Diego, I would say that it's a big airport with a medium size, but with the construction going on out there, especially for the next year or so, I think, and with parking limited, it might be a good time to get in there to the airport to let folks know where they can jump in a cab. This is what Uber's done. What Uber did in New York airport is that they had ground stickers on the floors, basically, that were kind of wayfinding, where it would lead them to exactly where you can go and find your Uber. That's a little bit more difficult for them because they're spread out over different zones. But with San Diego, the wayfinding could be pretty simple because the way that you guys are set up, you have that one specific area where the cab or taxi queue is, and it can lead folks right to where that is or point them in the right direction. And so it's where Lyft and Uber are at a disadvantage of having people spread out throughout the different parking zones. You guys have a dedicated queue area that is very, very easy to find once we know where it is. These are other transportation services that have been in throughout our airports. We, at one time, Super Shuttle was out at San Diego Airport. They advertised, and you could see the other limo services and other folks trying to grab that share of people that need a lift to the Gaslamp Battalion District, wherever they're going. And typically the dwell time is in Backclaim is about 15-20 minutes. So plenty of time. You can see that screen that's there with the QR code to kind of guide folks to where to get a cab. You can, if you're on the concourses, as people are coming into the airport, they'll see those ads. And as people are moving around, they'll see those ads. Print ads are available, but I think the disadvantage of print ads are it only has one message to cover all four terminals and 2 concourses. There'll be several what we call tension fabric displays to purchase and install and remove, whereas the messages in digital could be up quickly, have many messages. We have what's called ad stacking, where you have a 10-second slot on the loop, and you could put in up to 5 different call to actions, messages, highlights, whatever you wanted to let the folks coming into San Diego know about taxi cab companies and where to find them. That's basically my presentation. I mean, I can answer any questions that anybody would like to ask.
Mr. Corbin, thank you very much for providing us with such a detailed presentation. I'm pretty sure members of the committee have questions for you. I would ask if you can remain online. I will go on with presenting on the other modes. And at the end, I will be open for a public comment and questions from the committee.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Once again, moving on to brochure rack. And just let me go back a little bit into one of the vendors who unfortunately did not provide us with any information that would be television, airport television. However, brochure rack did provide us with detailed information, and you might be familiar with this display if you've been to any airport, but particularly here in San Diego. You will find them in various areas that I'll cover here in a minute. But basically, the prices for this method of advertisement would be $110 per month for brochure space. This is based on a 12-month order just for brochures. And in the event that a magazine is to be published or distributed, it would be $230 per month for the magazines. This does not include the cost to design or print the brochure magazines. This is only for the rental space of the advertisement rack. These racks are distributed in 7 locations within the San Diego Airport, including Terminal 1 by the baggage claim area from gates 1 and 2. Also Terminal 1 at the traveler's aid desk near the main baggage claim area, and at Terminal 2 at the traveler's aid desk near the international arrivals, and also at the new rental car center.
David, Mr. Tyson, we're gonna have Lenny finish the presentation and then do public comment, and then we'll have everyone have an opportunity to ask questions.
Sure, I'll address it at the end. Additional information on this method, brochure rack. The client would need to provide the rack cards or brochures to certified folder display services for their distribution and display. The requested minimum quantity of brochures or rack cards is 10,000 pieces, which should be enough for several months, depending on the actual usage. Rack cards or brochure or the brochure size needs to be standard, a standard size. If the customer needs a rack card design, then they also offered additional in-house design services for $425. They do not provide printing of those materials, but they can they can reference those services to other printing companies for a discounted price as necessary. We also conducted, as I mentioned at the beginning of this item, a survey of potential opportunities at the Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. I should know that Terminal 1 is under construction, so some of the signage that I'll show here in the slides are temporary. The one that you see right now is from Terminal 2. It's a permanent kiosk that's handled by Ace Parking. There is no advertisement. It only provides information on available ground transportation providers, such as their names, their telephones, and contact information. Those kiosks are manned, or our staff, I should say, by Ace Parking customer service representatives, which are on scene to provide additional information from 8 a.m. to midnight, 12 a.m. These are some of the signs, the temporary signs that are currently on display at by Terminal 1, which is under construction, as you can see. But we wanted to provide the committee with a visual of what's available out there today, or what we could use in the future as an option, if this is something that we would like to consider. Terminal 2, this is a permanent signage of informational nature, display pointing passengers to precisely where the taxi cabs are located when the line starts. But as they're handled by Ace Parking, but as you can see, they're not of an advertisement nature per se for a particular taxi cab company. We consider these signage to be more informative. So for this type of basic advertisement possibilities, A-frames are a possibility. They're made out of hard plastic. The surface is 36 inches high by 25 wide. There are some benefits to this method. They're easy to store or deploy, and it's also easy to remove or add content by placing the laminated advertisement on top of the A-frame. So that's what we identified as a low-end practical possibility to advertise at the taxi cab terminals as we speak, even as Terminal 1 is under construction, or at Terminal 2, in addition to what other signage Ace Parking has out there for informational purposes. So that being said, Chair, this concludes our presentation on the methods that we identified. I believe Mr. Corbin is available still to answer questions on his presentation, and I will also do so once I'm able to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Do we have any public comment on this
No
item?
public comment.
All right, we will start taking some questions and comments in a moment. I just want to say thank you again, Lenny, for the work on this. I know that this took a good amount of time, especially arranging the field trip to scope out the airport. I'll just mention briefly, one of the things that I thought was important for this conversation. The taxis have an advantage, a competitive advantage over the rideshare apps at the airport, in that there's always a taxi waiting. I've never had to wait for a taxi, but I don't think the average person who lands in San Diego knows that. Even San Diegans who are flying in and out don't know that there's a taxi waiting for them if they just walk a few more feet. And so wanting to ensure that as many visitors to the airport as possible know that there are cabs there. That way, those who are prioritizing speed know that you all are the best option. So that was the impetus and the inspiration for the conversation here. Hopefully this is somewhat helpful. I'm looking forward. I got a few more questions, but I'll hold off on those. Peter, I see your light on. Alfred, David. So we'll go Peter, Alfred, and David.
So I wanted to know if from Clear Channel, if we could get a copy of their slide deck. The presentation they made.
What was that?
I want to know if we could get a copy of the slide deck you used just to have and reflect on rather than have it over with. So
Sure, it can be forwarded to you.
forward it to Lenny and then people could ask.
Yes.
Yeah,
could
Lenny
read
has
it
a
to the
copy
chat.
of it, so anyone that I sent it to can forward it to you guys. That's not a problem at all.
Great, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to just add, this will be part of the final meeting packet, so it'll also be available online.
Okay. That's fine.
All right, thanks, Samantha. Alfred?
Who's paying for this advertisement? Who's for that benefit? Where would the advertisement would be on the taxi island, correct? Who pay for the ad? Who does the ad benefit?
I'll answer that question, Mr. Banks. MTS conducted this your study, present the committee with the advertisement opportunities. However, it is not the role of MTS or any other regulatory agency for that matter to advertise, to actively conduct advertisement on behalf of the industry. That's something at this point that's informational for industry stakeholders to determine pricing, to determine possibilities, and to collectively come up with a plan in the event that the industry is interested in advancing with these advertisement opportunities. The agency MTS is open to exploring possible, not, we wouldn't call it advertisement opportunities, but to assist the industry with informational, any type of informational material to the benefit of the passenger in terms of available taxi cabs, in terms of maximum rates of fare. We're going to explore a flat rate in the future. That's something that the committee has brought up. So in those terms, we can discuss in any future meetings, or in the meantime, you can reach out to my office and we will look into that. But as far as funding, that would be up to the industry to figure it out, what would be the best approach. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, the industry, does that mean individual taxi or the corporation?
It could be individually, it could be collectively among the permit holders. It could be among the dispatch services. That's the freedom this committee has to determine what's the best alternative and what's the best method in the event that the industry does decide to take advantage of some of these opportunities.
Yeah, I think, Lenny, what I'm hearing you say is you're trying to offer what's available, and it's kind of up to the individual and the group here to figure out how they'd like to take advantage of what's available, if they'd like to at all. Not an action item here, but for you all to kind of,
That's correct, Chair.
yeah, have a conversation after the meeting and figure out how you want to do it. Theoretically, any one taxi cab driver could advertise, right? Or everyone could collectively chip in and let folks know that, this is where taxis are, the wait is 0 minutes, et cetera, et cetera.
That is correct.
All right, David?
I've got two questions. One is for the gentleman who's on audio system. I can tell you, third child, correct?
Was that for me? I couldn't hear.
My apologies, sorry, I came a little late.
Put your mic down.
Sorry. The gentleman from Clear, are you from Clear Channel Communications?
Yep, Clear Channel Airports, that's me.
What's the cost per signage, or is it one program for all the signs above the carousel? Is it per carousel, or is it a one fee for all carousels?
It's for the network. So there are 3 networks out at the airport. There's what we call the rivals, or the video wall network, which is a large network throughout the terminals. There is a premier network that's throughout the concourses. And there is a arrivals or bag claim network that's over the bag belt. So the rates would be per period, which is 28 days for the entire network. And the entire network, the networks, 3 networks run in sync. So there are 3 different options for those networks. Does that make sense? So you would get all the screens within a network for a specific rate, depending on the term.
Okay, now, so if someone wanted to come in and say, wanted to do one network, or let's just say over the carousels, what's the cost per network?
We have a specific rate, and we could delve into that later on. But it's going to depend on several factors. Short-term versus long-term. Long-term is 13 periods, which is about a year. Short-term are rates where you come in for like three months, 2 weeks, that sort of thing. And then there's longer term, like being in there for 2 years, 3 years. So all those are going to factor into the different rates. And depending on I don't want to say that there is a discount rate for organizations, but because I work closely with the airport and closely with organizations, there could be a different rate as far as what the rate is for that. And then so it's all going to depend. I'm sorry, that's a call coming in on. So there are many different variables, and I think I'm not going to put out any specific numbers at this point because I don't know what we're looking at as yet.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be like a
No,
used car
you're
salesman.
doing exactly what you're doing. That I expected that answer.
Okay,
My question to Lenny is that $110, is that per stand or is it 110 for all stands?
It's
Right there.
for all
Right.
the stands available at San Diego Airport,
Okay, so it's 110 for all stands or 110 per stand?
all stands.
I wanted to, because it wasn't specific how it was written up. That's why I'm asking the question.
It would be for all stands available at San Diego Airport, which,
Okay, now, did they give you a setup fee or just, is that the 425 setup fee?
no, the 425, that's for additional printing.
Right,
Yeah, the 110 that you're referring to is just for the space at the 7 locations
Right.
within the airport.
but so if we went in there and gave $110, we would get all 7 stands throughout the airport, correct?
So long that the customer provides the material
Right,
to be
right.
displayed, yes.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Oh, I have one more comment for Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson, I've talked to Mark about this before, and the signage at Terminal 1 is incorrect. I've asked Mr. Mark to correct it, and I'm wondering why the airport has not corrected it over the last year. Terminal 1 taxi stand.
What's the signage? What's the?
There's a temporary sign that Ace put up there. That's got the phone numbers of all the cab companies. And half of them are wrong. I mean, no offense, but they've got wrong phone numbers on half of it. Brought to the attention of Mr. Mark a year ago, over a year now, and I have not had even seen any changes to that. It's not allowing, there's nothing about yellow cab being on there. There's nothing of that nature on that sign. It's not complete. We have 9 radio dispatch services and over almost half the numbers are wrong. So I was wondering why you haven't corrected it.
I'll look into it. We have gone through construction and I
That's
don't know,
even before the construction starts or the sign was still there.
and I don't know who pays for that sign, if that's a taxi expense or that's something for the airport updates, but I'll look into it.
Thank you.
I did have a couple of comments.
Yeah.
Just all the wayfinding signage that Lenny had showed on the traffic island. That currently is all provided by the airport at no cost. The driver is wayfinding for our customers, so we want them to be able to find the operators that they're looking for. So that signage is all non-paid advertising, and the advertising is really in the terminal area that was shown by Clear Channel. And then I was also going to ask if Mr. Corbin from Clear Channel could give us kind of a current idea of what things are not allowed to be advertised in the airport, just so we have that information. I think like with alcohol, I think we have a non-alcohol advertising policy, as well as tobacco products and maybe some other things. Since we're going to be talking a little about advertising on other areas.
okay. Let me we have a list of what's not, what we can't advertise at the airport. Every airport is different. Big things about the airport is cannabis. You can't advertise alcohol there because I've worked with Nova Brewery, but it's a long list. Specifically, tobacco is not allowed. I'm not sure how that would connect with taxi cabs.
It just in the fact that I think we might be looking at taxis being able to advertise on their vehicle, and those policies would probably be the same with our policy of our terminal advertising on what the airport allows or disallows.
Oh, yeah, that's going to vary because that's the cabs don't come inside the terminal, and all we're responsible for with our contract is when we work with the airport is what they advertise inside the airport. So I don't think it would be the same parameters of what's advertising inside the airport of what would be on the cab. And if you're talking about having a picture of the cab with a cannabis ad on it in the ad running in the airport, that would not be allowed. But those are two separate entities, and I wouldn't know what the airport allows advertised outside of the airport.
Just that, currently we do not allow any advertising on any taxi vehicle, Uber, TNC, any kind of advertising at all, except for pertinent information, the company name, the.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to get out the information that, we do have rules, and those rules may be the same for advertising on either bus wraps or things that are not actually going through the terminal, but that are circulating on the airport property.
If I may, Mr. Anderson, we should cover
Okay.
more precise information on the following agenda item on
Alright.
your comments.
And thank you for providing that insight.
No problem.
All right, we'll do one or two more questions on this item before we move along. We've got Mr. Gurman, then if nobody else has a question, we'll go back to Mr. Z2.
Okay. So why do we need advertisement in the airport? Inside, since we can advertise on our rooftop, and Mr. Anderson, for a question for you, can we do advertisement on our taxi top rooftop without those, marijuana or alcohol?
So actually, that's a great question, but that is all for the next agenda item. So anything about
Okay.
advertising on taxi cabs, let's actually try to ensure we keep with the agenda and talk about that at the
Okay.
next item.
Okay,
Thank
one more question. So, everybody just like the council member said, almost everybody knows there is a taxi stand somewhere at the airport. So whether those people get a number from the advertisement at the airport, Yellow Cab, USA, or American, they have to come and then take the first cab in line anyways. So I don't understand why we need to pay for the advertisement.
Well,
So,
from my standpoint, can I handle it from my perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the assumption that everybody knows that there's a taxi cab line is may not be accurate. I think for generationally, millennials are first thing that they're gonna do is look at, even before they get downstairs to back claim, is they're gonna start looking for where the rideshare area is. They're gonna plug in Uber or Lyft, and they're gonna have to wait 20 or 30 minutes. I think, and me and Lenny discussed this, I think if people that travel a lot to San Diego may know that, but if you're looking at a lot of people that come in, vacationers, whatever, that want to get to their hotel, you may be missing an opportunity because you're assuming they're going to walk outside and see where the taxis are. That's correct, but they've already made their decision to get an Uber or to get a Lyft. I think advertising out of inside the airport for taxi cab companies would be to grab people before they make a decision to use Lyft or Uber, because by the time they walk out that door, that decision is being made. So it's having a presence within to capture that audience like me or different generational folks that still want to use a cab, but as they're walking through the airport, through these long concourses, and they want to get to their hotels, they're thinking Uber, Lyft. But if they see taxi cab and how to get there easily, that may change their behavior and drive them towards those easy taxi cabs that you're exactly right. It's so easy to find them. They may say, I don't want to wait 30 minutes for Uber or Lyft. I'm just going to jump in a cab. That's just my perspective.
yeah, and we'll go to Mr. Majid in a moment here. So obviously, I don't care if Clear Channel makes money, because frankly, no offense, sir. That's not why
None taken.
We didn't convene the conversation for the benefit of the Clear Channel. It was to make sure that folks understand the option. I think, again, from my vantage point, I know that I have multiple friends who I've landed with at the airport and they get out their phone and I'm like, no, we're gonna walk and get a cab because it's there. And they're like, their mind is blown because they're so conditioned over the last decade to go right to the app that they don't even think about that. And so I think the reason why we thought the conversation was good to have is to allow you all an opportunity to think about as an industry, how to let more people know that the stand is there, and not just the stand is there, but the cab is there and ready for them, so that you can, start to get back in front of the line, in front of the app. So we'll go to Mr. Majid and then back to Mr. Banks. Oh, sorry, Mr. Majid, then to Peter, and then Alfred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the point of this exercise is to direct more traffic to the taxi cab stands at the airport, this is obviously, we do it at some airports, especially at LAX, we're very active. This is not a cheap venture. So the first part is the budgeting part of this, who's gonna pay for it? That's number one. And number two, okay, you put up the taxi there, any advertisement, there has to be some sort of an incentive for that person to get directed to cab versus another mode of transportation. So whether it's a discount or a QR code or whatever the case may be, that's something else that needs to be discussed in the nuts and bolts of this thing. But I made these comments at the workshop the other day that we had here. We're not doing ourselves any favors by pricing ourselves out of the business. And that's exactly what we're doing at this airport today. I personally myself, I am not aware of any airports that taxi cabs at the airports that charges the rates that we're charging at this airport. By far, by any stretch of imagination, we're the most expensive taxi cab transportation anywhere at any airport. Not in Orange County, not at LAX that are a lot bigger. And I'm aware of many, many, many airports throughout the country that does not charge. So unless we help ourselves and bring ourselves back in line to some reasonable pricing, you can buy every advertisement that's out there. Nobody's going to walk towards the taxi cab because TNCs have got us beat when it comes to convenience. I personally took a cab about 3 weeks ago from the airport to my office, which is not that far. All of you guys know where our offices are. It was $37. And I will not take another taxi because it's not affordable. The rates that we're charging is simply not affordable to the general public. Maybe some business customers may say, okay, I don't care, the company's paying, but the general public, and it's affecting our business because most of the people we transport to the airport and drop them off, and we get a call back and say, you know what? You charge us this price and going out, it was outrageous. I'm never going to take a taxi cab. On average, 5, 7 people per day call us and complain about our prices at the airport. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Mr. Majid. So we'll, okay, so we'll do, we'll go to Mr. Zichi, Alfred, and then Mr. Seifu, and then we're gonna wrap it up just because we've got a big agenda today and we want to make sure we get through that.
Okay, my thoughts about this are that, and I understand Lenny's comment about MTS is a regulatory agency, so you can't pay for advertising, but in my mind, what I want to explore is a public service announcement that we could generate, either MTS could generate it just as a general information, as a piece of the transportation system that they offer. Yeah, you regulate us, but we're part of you. We're not like a bus, but we're part of you. So I'd like to explore the option of having some kind of generic public service announcement on behalf of the industry that says, and you're right, you go to the airport, you get who's in line. So it really doesn't matter which, you don't have to be a company, we're an industry. And I'd like to explore that either with MTS or with the city of San Diego as regulatory agencies, why they can't have some kind of public service announcement that promotes us as a piece of the publicly regulated, publicly operated transit system. I'd like to explore that. And number two is, in terms of our friends at the airport, which is also a regulatory agency, but public, I'd like to know if there's a way to explore them. That people don't have to make a lot of money off of us. We service the airport. We're partners. We participate. I don't think we should be treated as the same as as a beer company or whoever else wants to ever, a closed company, any other private enterprise. It's just at the airport to have you buy their stuff. I think we're a particular kind of service at the airport. And I would think that the airport board would be open to a suggestion of if we had some kind of generic announcement on behalf of the industry that's just telling people about our form of transportation, what the advantages are, we're regulated, we're safe. If we're overpriced, that's another issue. I'd rather discuss that not as part of this agenda item. I think there's a way to do this. So I don't think the burden should be on the individual taxi owners to pony up money, to put up with whatever. I think we should, before we have to do, to me, that would be the last resort if we want to do something. I think the way to approach this is who would help us with the public service announcement that says we're part of public transit in San Diego, we're publicly related, and we offer a service, and here we are. I'm done.
Thank you. Peter, Alfred?
Yeah, I don't think the advertisement is necessary because when people get out of the plane, they tend to think about taxi, but because of Uber coming a few years ago, some people plan for that, but sometimes when they see a taxi, they rather take a taxi. Only the personal people, the most business people, they want to take taxi, take them to where they're going faster than Uber and Lyft. So I think the advertising, unless everybody have to chip in paying for the advertisement, but each individual, you cannot advertise for somebody else to pick up the customer. I don't think advertisement in the airport is unnecessary. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go to Mr. Seifu. Marga, we're gonna try to move on to the next item. What I do want to encourage, and this is up to you all, right? It's your business, not mine. Does sound like there's a dialogue that's happening here. You all know how to run your businesses. I'm not going to even suggest how to do that. I'm just sharing as a millennial who flies. I'm letting y'all know, my friends, absent me telling them, do not think about taxis. And so we're just wanted to make sure that we're giving you all an opportunity to know what options are there to put a reminder in front of folks that taxis are still servicing the airport. Mr. Seifu?
Okay, thank you for giving me this chance. This is the way I see it. Right now, our waiting time is 5 to 6 hours per day, that's usual right now. And what happened is in the last meeting when we raised the price, was against this idea, but hey, whatever happens, and we voted, and now the customer is paying for it. And now, as Akbar is saying, yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, it's going to be expensive, and that's what we want. And it looks like maybe in February, again, we're going to raise it again. We don't see the real picture. So now when we have the advertisement, this is the way I see it. Now you're going to have customer walk into the island. You're going to tell them, hey, take yellow cab or take orange cab because they have a cheaper rate. And you have 500 individual owners. I just assume maybe 400 permit holders at the airport, and you're gonna give them, everyone gonna get equal opportunity. And that means maybe let's say you have 100 drivers who won't be interested to advertise. You're gonna have 100 signs at the airport. Then you're gonna confuse the customer. Should I take Odyssey cab? Should I take orange cab? Should I take American cab? Should I take USA cab? They cannot even read it. You don't get the message well. So it's going to create more confusion and going to create tension between the individual owners and the big companies. And the big companies, they might offer a cheaper rate. And the individual owners, they just want to give the discounted rates. And I see that it's going to be for sure we're going to create this tension in the future. So we have to look this thing really seriously because it looks like we're heading to the wrong way. So I'm advising you guys, please, let's look over this idea because it looks like we're going to have a problem in the future. Thank you.
All right. With that, let's move to our next agenda item 5, Lenny.
Thank you, Chair. And just pretty quick on that item, a reminder that Clear Channel's presentation will be uploaded later today and will be available at our website for your review. Agenda item number 5,
Hey, Lenny, quick question.
Sure.
Do you need me to stay on for the rest of the meeting or?
You're more than welcome, Mr. Corbin. However, thank you for your presentation. You're more than welcome to join us for the following, perhaps for this item, which has to do with what Mr. Anderson raised in terms of advertisement in the cabs. You're more than welcome to stay.
Okay, yeah, I'll stick around for a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Agenda number 5, MTS Board Policy number 21 and Taxicab vehicle advertisement content. Currently, the advertisements on for-hire vehicles may be posted in accordance with MTS Policy number 21, revenue generating display advertisement concessions and merchandise, which is a part of attached to this agenda item. And it also needs to be posted in accordance with ordinance number 11, which basically requires that the advertisement method does not interfere with the required markings such as the company's DBA and most importantly, the medallion number. And for those markings to be in contrast with the vehicle wrap or the advertisement content. That way they're distinguishable to the public. It also requires prior approval for hire vehicle administration before it's posted in or outside the taxi cab. Advertisement may provide a revenue stream for taxi cab permit holders while promoting local businesses, services, events, and products to our residents and visitors. With the exception of low-speed vehicles, no taxi cabs currently display advertisements. These are some types of advertisements that are allowed currently under our policy in terms of the methods. Content is different, but in this case, they would be allowed. Digital top signs, or they can be solid, as most of this committee are familiar with those type of signs. They're solid. They're just, they just display one content. However, in some other cities, digital top signs have been, are prevalent, and this allows, it's like a TV, and we're familiar with that concept. So, they change. It allows for multiple products or services to be displayed. And also vehicle wrappings like this one in Vegas, promoting a show. And these are two methods of taxi cab vehicle advertisement that would be allowed under our policy. However, on June 15, our board of directors authorized a 2-year pilot to allow alcohol advertisement in our revenue vehicles, such as fixed route buses and trolleys. And by extension of the policy, our taxi cabs and for hire vehicles. That being said, taxi cabs may now advertise special events involving alcohol consumption, such as a beer fest and alcohol or other beer specific brands. If an alcohol or a beer brand ad, they must have a safe drinking message included. Please contact me if if you require any further information or are interested in advertisement that may involve alcohol products. With these changes, for hire vehicle administration has reviewed its advertisement regulations for our for hire vehicles. For hire vehicles are privately owned and maintained. Our current board policy 21, which covers for hire vehicle advertisement, was originally developed with the legal framework that involved free speech on publicly owned vehicles, such as our buses, trolleys, and property. For now, we believe that using that board policy is likely not the most appropriate way to regulate for hire vehicle advertisement content. For hire vehicle administration is requesting feedback from this committee on whether to allow for hire vehicle advertising without any prohibitions on content and without receiving prior approval from MTS. This may increase revenue for taxi cabs if they can advertise expanded content, for instance, cannabis. Any changes would require ordinance number 11 revisions and subsequent board approval. And as Mr. Anderson noted earlier at the other agenda item, taxi cabs that operate out of the San Diego airport would be subject to the airport's advertisement policy. The airport advertising policy at this time has similar provisions on advertisement content to MTS policy number 21. Chair, we're open to feedback from the committee on this side.
Thank you, Lenny. Do we have public comment on this item?
No public comments.
All right. Thank you again, Lenny, for bringing this. And again, the idea here is to have a conversation about potential revenue opportunities for the taxi industry. So definitely looking forward to the conversation here. I guess before I ask my questions, I'll go ahead and see, are there any member questions or comments on presentation here? Mr. Graham?
Is it about the advertisement or any other?
About this item.
Okay. How about, may I ask Mr. Anderson, is the airport allowed a rooftop advertisement, or we're gonna discuss about it?
Currently, our taxi agreement does not allow any advertising on the taxi, and all of our other operating modes are not allowed to do any advertising except for the core, your business name, your DBA, and your medallion number, as Lenny stated in this presentation.
But the screen option that was demonstrated, that could be turned off while in the airport, thus allowing someone to run advertisements simply not on. They just can't do it on your property. You can't tell them what to do outside of your property. That's not a question, that's a statement. Sorry, it's just, so if folks wanted to utilize the screen option, they could shut it off while they're, theoretically shut it off while they're on airport property, turn it back on when they're off grounds.
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds like it wouldn't be advertising.
Mr. Grimm, you had a follow-up?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and then we'll go to Mr. Majid and then Mr.
Okay.
Banks.
All right, so, as you know, Mr. Lani, 85%, maybe 80% our business is at airport, right? This time, because of, all of us almost have medallion, so we would like to ask Mr. Anderson to consider, let us put our top rooftop sign without any alcohol or any drug, any other pictures, just advertising about San Diego, restaurants, and, beaches like that. So that covers our at least insurance fee a month. Just consideration, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Did you want to respond to that, Mr. Anderson?
Sure, I don't oversee our advertising policy. I just know that we don't currently allow it. I'm sure I have concerns about, there was a policy put in place, and we've done this for so many years, that if we undo it, there's consequences that I'm not quite aware of right now. I'm concerned that we have several TNCs that operate, and what the content, the advertising program at the airport, every single advertisement is screened. It's not a blanket. We accept just all these. Every single advertisement is vetted, whether it's approved or not. So even our current policy, we just don't do a complete blanket. If it's not tobacco, it's okay. Every single thing is scrubbed. I can't comment on that. And then also I'm trying to think of it globally, like what happens if all our modes are doing the same thing. I'm also concerned about economically, like if all our ground transportation operators begin advertising, is that going to dilute the effective revenue that operators are going to get? So that was my kind of question too, is how much money is on the table, like with this option of advertising? Uber and Lyft, they have approached the airport with this before, and we've said no. So that would be.
Is that ultimately a board decision?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So it would need to go up to that level higher than me.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Majid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think almost all of you remember that for the longest time on every single vehicle, we had stop signs for many, many years. But ultimately, we came to the conclusion that the revenue, it is not worth the headache. And if I'm in the position to give you all advice, trust me, I did a substantial amount of business with Clear Channel, Jeff Simmons, if he's still with them. We did it from the revenue that you're getting from that box on your car is not worth the headache. It causes a lot of issues to the vehicle itself because it has to be electronically connected everywhere. I don't want to get into the minutia, but at best contracts that I got from Clear Channel, they were paying me $75, and we were passing that on to the owner of the vehicle for $75 a month. The headache is not worth it if I'm in the position to give you advice as a colleague. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Banks?
Yeah, I think that is a very big issue, the advertisement issue, because sometimes some people will be putting something there that doesn't make sense. It's not something you can switch on or switch off. When it's there, you can remove it automatic. So if the airport don't want to go there, just leave it like that because it'll be a big problem. The other people advertising something. I think we just leave it there. The airport doesn't want it.
All right, Margot, I see your light on.
I have a concern about cannabis. I know the ads, we know where they sell them, and they do a very good security job. The problem is we carry a lot of military. They cannot be in a vehicle that's advertising cannabis. And that would be a big no-no, and we'd lose a lot of business from that. We see the advertising on the buses, and most of it's great, and that's cool. But in general, I have to agree with Akbar on this. Not only did I drive top signs when I was driving for Yellow and as a lease driver and company, but American Cab, American Red Top Best also had window signs, and the people didn't pay for them. So you're losing money and you're losing some business because people are saying we don't want to be in that vehicle. I think our cabs need to be clean and visible and very friendly. And again, the cannabis one is a serious problem. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gurr?
Yeah, the rooftop advertisements can be controlled by iPhone or tablet. You can turn off and on anytime you want. So we can turn off when we get to the island. We can turn on all the time. So another, I'm sorry. And question for Mr. Majid. You just mentioned you're tired of the cost of a rooftop advertisement, and then what's your point? So is that discouragement to us? And then the number two question for you, you're charging $200 per week drivers, and then you don't like it when they charge you $27 through from the airport to your office. And then what is your point? Thank you.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
He's asking a
Yeah.
question, but if you say no, I'm perfectly fine.
No, go ahead.
I'm not trying to discourage anybody. God bless you. I hope you put 5 types of top signs on your cab. I was just offering some free friendly advice that we have had that experience. You don't see it on any of our cars now because the profits that you were making, the revenue that it was generating, it was not worth the headache that comes with it. God bless you. I hope you put 5 of them on top of your cab. I couldn't care less. Thank you.
All right, and just so we kind of circle back to what feedback Lenny was soliciting is with respect to an MTS policy, right? So would the preference be as an industry for there to be some prohibitions on the type of advertising that could exist on a taxi? Or would you prefer you all just figure it out on your own, right? I think that's kind of the question in front of you all. Do we want industry standards, or are we, comfortable with a situation where each driver or each company can make those decisions on their own? If there's any specific feedback on that, I think that's for Lenny and Lenny, Samantha, and my purposes, that's kind of the most important thing for us to know as we think about any potential policy changes at MTS. Mr. Safa? Yeah. But that's this, right? That's what this is. Did you have something, Peter?
And come up with a thing, that's our job. I'm just telling you that we have a committee. That's our problem because we're set up to represent the industry. So if we want to have a meeting and invite 400, I'm just saying that this is a problem for us to solve because that's why this committee exists, is to represent the industry. Now, obviously, we're a small group. But if you wanted to organize the industry and have an open session about whether they want to be, how they want to regulate advertising, then you could organize a big meeting and anybody who wanted to come, you could organize 2 meetings and 3 meetings, and then you get their feedback. And then you come back to this committee and you bring the feedback, and then you just figure out if you want to establish some rules and regulations or not. That's the way you do it. But it's on us. If we want to do it, we could do it. If we don't want to do it, then we don't do it. But don't look for somebody else to do it. That's why you're on this committee, is to represent the industry for better or for worse. So if we're concerned about 400 taxi drivers getting input on whether they want to have an advertising policy, then that's up to us to organize that.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. The last thing I'll say is, I mean, the question is essentially being posed to an industry. Do you want rules or do you not want rules? I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever seen that question posed to any industry and the answer not be no rules, please. We'll figure it out ourselves. Now you might have really good reasons why you don't want to figure it out amongst yourselves. But what we wanted to do is at least allow for that conversation to get some feedback from the folks in the industry. You might say, look, we think there will be a few bad actors that'll make the whole industry look bad. We're going to ask MTS to step in here and put some rules in place. But we wanted to have the conversation and solicit the feedback. Peter, did you have it?
Yeah, to me, and I wasn't around when this all started with the people assuming under, but to me, this is some of the past arrogance on the part of the board that they used this policy, which obviously didn't apply to us. And we were overregulated in a lot of ways, and we struggled about loosening up the regulations in the industry for a number of years, and people on this board have led that way. But to me, MTS created this problem by assuming that they could tell us what to do. But like you're right, we're private operators. So the fact that you would tell us what we couldn't do in this regard, to me, shows a tendency in the past of MTS to act like we're part of you. And then when you don't want to do advertising, then you say, oh no, you're not part of us. You guys are private operators. You're going to have to come up with your own money to do this and that. I think in the past, it's been obscured as to exactly what MTS's power over us was. And so I think this is a healthy thing, like you're suggesting. It's a healthy thing that we ask ourselves, do we want some rules around advertising? But if you're going to do that, we're going to have to address Abel's situation. What he brought up is, if you truly want to represent the drivers, you're going to have to give opportunity for people to have input as to whether they want rules over themselves or they just want to be cowboys and do whatever.
Chair, if I may provide a little
Yeah,
bit more
sure.
context on that. MTS has been very proactive and also in the current committee and past committees in providing opportunities for the industry to receive additional revenue. It's still one of our purposes. That's why we spoke about the prior agenda item. That's where we're bringing this update to the committee. And it stems from some media companies that have been asking for hire vehicle administration as to when would we allow advertisement, particularly for cannabis, which seems to be the main advertisement product out there. So Would it result in additional revenue streams for permit holders? Not knowing the particulars or the dynamics or the pricing that Mr. Majid brought a while back, that would be between the industry, between the individual permit holder collectively or on a per capita basis, once again, between those media outlets. What we're trying to do here is just provide that update to see, to let the committee know that now alcohol is allowed. But then again, it's where, as the chair mentioned, is that the underlying subject here is the type of regulation. Should MTS be involved in that, or does the industry prefer to take that approach and decide what they can advertise or not, with the intent, I would say, of having additional revenue streams for your business. It would apply if this was to be adopted by our taxi drivers. It would apply only for MTS area jurisdiction and the 9 cities that we regulate. The San Diego Airport is in the Regional Airport Authority. It's its own entity. That would be a different subject that would have to be addressed at the board level with the airport to see if there can be some consolidation with that. But assuming this, at this point, it would only apply to the 9 cities and the city of San Diego as far as that advertisement, if it was approved.
Thank you, Lenny. Mr. Wesa, did you have comments?
I just thought that we're getting away from the object of what I think Lenny pretty much brushed on it, but it's other options that we have. That's all. I don't think we're forcing it on anybody. If you want to do it, I think the table has been set. If you're interested in going and pursue it, it's on the table. So if you want to do it, go for it.
Yeah, and I think
It's just options.
right. And to that point, Mr. Wesa, I think the kind of secondary, the supplementary question is, you know, the options are there. You can do wraps, you can do rooftops. For MTS to know from an industry perspective is, you know, what sort of rules should MTS be considered changing with respect to what could be on those wraps or on those rooftop displays. And from the sound of this conversation, doesn't sound like there's a lot of interest in changing the rules. That's good to know. Lenny, you want to address this again?
Currently, policy number 21 in terms of content. And the only change to that would be now is that the board authorized a 2-year pilot program for alcohol content, advertisement content.
It just said that the policy 21 is not a way to regulate privately owned taxi.
It's right now, it is. It's in the ordinance. All advertisement content is subject to MTS policy number 21. And the feedback that we're requesting is if the committee and the industry believes that this policy does not apply or shouldn't apply to private for hire vehicles. That's the feedback that we want to get from the committee. And if that is the case, then would the industry would like for that to take effect in terms of not having any restrictions whatsoever, besides the ones that are by federal statute or the state, which, you know, include lewd content or other items.
Yeah, and to that point, what I just kind of what could follow this conversation, if you all said, yeah, get rid of the rules. We would think about how to take an item to the full board, and I would go there as a board member and say, we had a conversation at the Taxicab Advisory Committee, and I heard from the industry, and they said, we're grown-ups, let us regulate ourselves. Or they said, look, we think that there's some real value in having the rules in place that we have. You know, keep it as is. I think that's kind of what would follow from this conversation.
Well, just to interrupt, we have it as an informational item.
Correct.
So now it's conflicting what you're saying.
No, it's not conflicting because we
Okay,
could
so
come, no.
I think if there's interest, I think it's on the table.
Yeah, so what we would do is, if based on this conversation, we could come back with an item that you all could approve and then send to the full board. Yeah. Mr. Majid, I think I saw your light for a split second.
I was just gonna say, the reason that these regulations were developed at one point, there's some history behind it. And I think it'd be best if we bring that up at the next meeting when we're taking this up, as to why we actually developed these policies. It goes back to us advertising pacers and gentlemen clubs and so on and so forth.
I second that. That's the best way.
I would
Give
like to
more
get
back
together
to-
with you, Mr. Majid. I was not around around that time, but I'm looking forward to that, and we could certainly provide more feedback that. And Chair, we're open, between now, members can also reach our office via email or in person to compile more feedback on this item.
Thank
Can I
you.
say, just keep the way as it is?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Grimm, the last comment here.
We stuck here on advertisement. Airports is not allowing us any advertisement, either wrap or rooftop. So we need to come with some agreements with airports. So I cannot wrap off or rip off my
Yep.
advertisements. Why?
To
Yeah.
give some consolation on that, if I may, Mark Nichols has always been very sympathetic in saying that whatever MTS approves, we will look at it. So they always look at it and they try to see how they can accommodate it.
All right, we'll go to Margot, and that's the last. Well, you always like to jump in at the end.
Okay, thank you. CBX, the signs going to the border say no cannabis, no marijuana, no weapons. What about CBX? Because if we have advertising down there, they might not allow it. And I just think I better throw that in there. So that when we have a discussion, that's part of it. Thank you.
All right, with that, let's move to our next item, item number 6.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 6, review of dispatch service technology and requirements. A background on this item, we first introduced this at our May 24th meeting, where we presented an informational item on reviewing our current dispatch service technology requirements. On June 8th, For Hire Vehicle Administration sent an email to the 9 authorized dispatch services requesting information to assess compliance with current MTS Ordinance 11 requirements. On June 29th, we hosted an ad hoc dispatch service technology and requirement work group in this room. The working group was by invitation only, and it included Taxicab stakeholders, some TAC members, permit holders, lease drivers, and dispatch service providers who attended and provided feedback on this topic. The findings out of the ad hoc working group based on the received responses from the dispatch services, we found disparities in the way some dispatch services receive and respond to service calls or other operational questions 24-hour or other operational questions on a 24-hour basis. On the way we found disparities on the way dispatch service utilized computerized dispatch and the ways they locate vehicles in service through a global positioning system or similar technology. We found that not all dispatch services are available to respond to phone calls 24 hours a day. We found that most dispatch services utilize an app, more particularly WhatsApp, which most of us are familiar with, or basic text messaging to dispatch taxicabs. We also found that most dispatch services rely on drivers to enable GPS location on their personal phones to locate them if needed. We provided a comparison between our 2 neighbor cities, Los Angeles and San Francisco, on their own dispatch service requirements, which are both similar to Ordinance 11 in terms of the 24-hour availability, computerized dispatch, and GPS technology. Los Angeles allows for franchise color scheme dispatching, but they do have a minimum number of subscribers for those color schemes at 100. They also allow for taxi app-based dispatching, proprietary or other, for example, Ride Yellow or Curb. And they also allow for additional surcharges if a trip is booked through the app. San Francisco, again, similar to Ordinance 11 requirements in terms of the 24-hour and computerized dispatch and GPS location. They also allow for franchise color scheme dispatching. They do not have a minimum number of subscribers. They require every dispatch service to provide, they do require main difference is that they do require every dispatch service to provide an app, proprietary or other. The ones that are available up there, the three ones that are available in San Francisco are Yo Taxi, Flywheel, and Curb. And they also allow for additional surcharges if a taxi trip is booked through the app. Ultimately, we found that most of the MTS authorized dispatch services currently fail to meet industry standards. And I'll elaborate more here in the next slide. The findings from the ad hoc group from the dispatch services, I'd like to add it was a very productive meeting. And these were the key takeaways from the dispatch services. Drivers that choose to operate out of the airport constantly refuse dispatch calls because they're already in that queue and they don't want to leave their spot. Drivers are generally not interested in receiving trips, in receiving trip requests. They're only interested in working at the airport. 75% of our fleet has a ground transportation permit for the airport. There are minimal calls for taxi service after the hours of mostly 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Some dispatch service coordinate with other dispatch services to ensure that trip requests are met, which is a good thing. Dispatch services are integral to ensure the prompt return of lost and found items. Most dispatch services do not utilize soft meter technology or utilize app-based dispatch. Some dispatch services offer different subscription prices based on calls provided to the drivers or equipment provided to the driver. Most dispatch services are not the merchant of record for credit card payments. As far as the finding based on feedback provided by the drivers receive minimum to no trip calls from the dispatch service. Dispatch service subscription costs are high and unnecessary. Trips outside of the San Diego airport are minimum as passengers prefer other options like TNCs. Dispatch services provide no substantial benefit and only charge fees so they can meet ordinance number 11 operational requirements. Subscription to dispatch service should be optional. Drivers should be able to directly subscribe with the remote universal dispatch service providers such as iCabby, Curb, or Flywheel, if this results in lower costs for drivers. And finally, drivers welcome the benefits on soft meter technologies. For instance, upfront pricing or potential partnerships with TNCs. And most of the attendees are also here today. And if I missed one of the takeaways, please feel free to add at the end of this item. So the next steps on this item for hire vehicle administration does find dispatch service. It does find that dispatch services serve an important and necessary function. For hire vehicle administration, we'll conduct an additional ad hoc working group to further discuss potential solutions to identified issues and concerns from the ad hoc meeting last month. We will work with dispatch services to ensure compliance with the following City of San Diego 500-02 dispatch requirements and identify if any future MTS number 11 ordinance revisions may be necessary to ensure compliance. And the basic requirements from City Council Policy 500-02 is that there's a 24-hour service available to dispatch and answer operation questions. Very important. We find that this requirement requires that a live person should answer phone calls or text messages immediately. I understand that there is advanced software also that would be artificial software that would allow prompts to dispatch that that trip besides a live person. Or in the event that dispatch service is able to dispatch a trip with text messaging, that the text message is immediately returned without wait times or delays, and without requiring the passenger to leave a phone message or not receiving an immediate text response. For the computerized requirement from City Council Policy 500-02, we find that the use of an app or text message to communicate between dispatch and drivers does not satisfactorily meet industry standards and does not allow for the dispatch technology enhancements passengers expect or that are necessary to compete with TNCs. Again, soft meter technology, ability to provide upfront pricing, trip data, and app-based dispatching. As far as for the GPS location requirement, we find that requiring a driver to enable their GPS phone location does not meet this requirement. Dispatch services must provide tracking capabilities by providing the equipment necessary to their subscribers. It could be a tablet, it could be an AirTag, or a transponder directly installed to the vehicle. That being said, I'm open for questions, and we will conduct a follow-up ad hoc meeting to further flesh out these concerns.
Thank you, Lenny. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do.
All right.
Izzy Aola.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Izzy Aala. I'm the CEO of Flywheel Technologies. So Flywheel is we provide the technology for end-to-end full service dispatch. So that goes from everything inside the vehicle, which is your smart meter, your GPS, even camera systems, printers, the whole gambit. We work in very highly regulated industries and cities that require everything from a backseat PIN, credit card processing. So we run the gambit of the whole spectrum. We also provide all the back office technology when it's just to cashiering and leasing, driver payments, credit card merchant processing. So all the back office side. So it's a full service. And so Flywheel is interested in learning more about the San Diego requirements and the opportunity to provide our technology here in San Diego. It has changed a lot as far as ways you dispatch. We're a big believer. I think I was here a month ago about self-service. So what Lenny was saying about automated IVR, which is an automated response that takes the call. You sound like you're talking to an actual person. You book the call goes to you, the driver and the passenger pairs up. And there is really no need for a middle person to really facilitate the ride. And that 70% of rides when they go through a call center are now automated like that, as far as our experience. Otherwise, they're using an app, which we have the Flywheel eHail app, partner up with a lot of marketplaces that can create a lot of demand. I think at the end of the day, what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding is, there's a lot of cost to all these things, and the really only way to pay for it is for taxis to be busy. So that means, partnering up with marketplaces, rideshare companies and such. I think that's the next topic. That's going to allow you to afford some of this stuff. And I think there'll be a big advantage for that. Thank you.
William Alozi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I had during the ad hoc committee, I did not. My name is William Alozi anyway, so I did not submit a representation on the Taxicab dispatch system. And when I was looking at the information out there, was stating that the Taxicab dispatch system, as has been we have been informed here, is riddled with a lot of problems now. The non-availability of 24-hour service and all other high cost of operation. So based on that, the taxi drivers are not receiving the services which they actually are envisaging they are paying for. For one to be telling us that it provides safety or it provides information for lost and found. Lost and found, we have a department for that at the airports, which takes care of lost and found. And for safety, we have 911. You can use 911 or you could use you could call the police if you're a driver, you have a problem on the road. So to me, or to most of the drivers, we believe the dispatch system as at the moment, not meeting the requirements is not completely necessary. And if we would suggest, it should be made optional. Thank you for your time.
That concludes public comment.
All right, we will now turn to committee members. We've got a couple more items after this one, so I'm just going to encourage folks to be concise. Mr. Banks.
The one that speak earlier, I say radio in Orange County, is that?
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I think.
Is it is he in the radio service or he have good equipment in the car? Yeah, I just want to ask her.
Yeah, that's fine. You'd like to say, okay.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question about your service. Are you in radio service or you put equipment in the car on the taxi?
Yeah, so it's super clear, right? We have dispatch technology. We are not driven by equipment. So if you have a smartphone or a tablet already inside your car, we're just software that goes in there. If you don't have it, we have partners in the hardware industry that can put hardware, which is a phone or a tablet, and has our Flywheel smart meter that's been certified through Weights and Measures. So we've been already certified through California Weights and Measures and the entire national Weights and Measures.
Okay, who provide the equipment to serve it? Who provide the tablets or the phone? Who provide it? Is it the owner or your company?
Yeah, ultimately, the owner of the vehicle or fleet owner is responsible for the hardware. Now, they could buy it from us. They can buy it from AT&T, right? We'll give you the specs. We'll say this software runs on this operating system, which is Android. And we'll tell you it needs this much capacity. If you can meet those needs, as far as the hardware, then you can just run our software. At the end, we're really all software based. And what hardware you use, we just have to make sure it's strong enough hardware. And if you need a place to buy hardware, we have partners with hardware companies. We can get you deals through them. Does that make sense? I hope.
You have many, almost 700 cab or whatever. Not, you don't expect everyone to spend money for that equipment when there's not much business going on to get that equipment to put in their car. That would be inconvenient for everybody to have the equipment.
Yeah. I mean, if you have the old taximeter Centrite that's been there for 10, 15 years, I get it. You sunk money in there early. You don't have to spend any money there. But the value of having a smart meter, I think, goes beyond just like having a digital. You'll be able to do a lot more different programs. You could do flat rates, zone rates, like upfront fares. Like if I knew that my fare was going to be this much, I may pay $37 because at least I know it, versus seeing that meter creep up and saying, oh my God, when is this going to end? Right? So as long as and that's what smart meters can do. They can dynamically create a flat rate. It depends on how you guys want to run it, but that's where successful industries in the taxi market is, if you knowing and understanding what your fare is. And it starts with a smart meter. Your old Centrite meter won't do that for you.
To the flat rate, can the customer see it on the meter, the flat rate, if you have a flat rate? Can they see it on the meter?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, full transparency. They have to. They can see in the meter what their rate is, what their final rate will be.
Anyway, that's too expensive for these new owners. Have to buy additional equipment to put in their car to get that service.
I get it. It is another cost. That's why we're trying to figure out. Well, I've been here a few days now, and I've been trying to figure out what type of market this is. Can you, where are the drivers getting their fares? If it's only from the airport waiting 4 to 5 hours a day for a trip, yeah, that's unacceptable. I don't think that's the right model. If you have drivers that are willing to work in the city and get orders from that, and from a true dispatch demand, that it's going to be such an easy investment. Your return on investment on a technology that will give you orders, it's like 10-1, But again, if you're going to sit in the airport with a smart meter, I wouldn't do it. Keep the centralized meter, stay at the airport. But if you're going to want to get work and increase your revenue, we have to find ways to be able to generate that demand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question regarding the lost and found. And the lost and found, it's not everybody call the airport. Airport have a lost and found. But when the driver have something in their car, some of them, they don't know they have something there. But they have to try and call any radio service, somebody can answer, where's my this and that. So anyway, many people do not understand how it works. I just want to clarify that. The airport have a lost and found only when the driver turns something in. That's when the airport will say, oh, I have it. But most of the driver, they don't turn anything into lost. I just answer and talk about that. It's not easy. Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Majid and then Mr. Seifu, and then try to wrap this one up. We can get to our next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to take issue with some of the comments that, all those bullet points, especially the negative ones. I just want to set the record straight that the negative ones are not applicable to every radio service. So that should be made clear. And the gentleman that just spoke that from Flywheel, IVR is a good thing, yes, but that's not a substitute for dispatch. There's a lot more that goes into a call center and to taking a call than just an IVR. Just for the record, it's not that simple. Just to replace an entire call center and staff with IVR. IVR can be used as a supplement, but not a substitute for dispatch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Majid. Mr. Seifu.
First, I just want to make a comment regarding drivers are not willing to take calls for radio dispatch. And that's funny to me because we wait 5-6 hours and these days just pick up a fare from the airport and go home because there is nothing at the hotels and other places. And I don't see why drivers will not willing to take calls from radio dispatch. Though that's not true. That's not facts on the ground. Another thing is I saw Flywheel and also I heard Uber at Yellow's working as a partner. And right now, that's going to be the only solution for the problem we're having right now. Because, as I say, drivers are desperate. They're willing to work. And I'm asking this board and the MTS to be easy on these people so they're going to start working with us and with the city. So it's going to make an easy transition for drivers to earn some money. I'm asking to just be flexible. I know we have some rules, regulation, and ordinance that this company has to follow, but sometimes, we have to see what's the benefits of the individuals and the benefits of the customers to allow these companies to work and look for the future. Right now, I was talking to a driver who moved actually from here to San Francisco, and he's telling me that the city is so busy at the airport, sometimes they don't want to take calls from Uber and Yellow's partner in San Francisco, but the driver not willing to take because they say that the ride is cheap. We don't want to take someone for $1 ride. So they say we work with Flywheel because they have a better rates, but not with Uber and the Yellow Cab because they say it's not money-wise, not worth it to take it. So right now, this other cities are in the transition for the future, but it looks like we are just stuck somewhere. Sometimes we want to benefit a certain individuals here, and we don't want to change the rules. So I hope that will be amended and make some changes. So we're gonna have drivers are, as I said, I'll say it again and again. We are suffering. We are paying the price. I don't know if we're gonna even exist next. Right now we're getting 1, 2, 3 calls pickups per day, and next year we don't know how many cabs is going to be at the airport, and We don't know how long the waiting time is gonna be, and we don't know, usually customer comes and you're gonna go 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away from the airport, and trust me, most of us, we don't give the best customer service right there because we've been waiting for 5 hours, 6 hours, and you see someone say, take me to Stratton Marina, take me to downtown. I know Mike Anderson and so well, you heard how many drivers were refusing fares and overcharging customers because of this policy, because of this change. This facts on the ground, and trust me, next year it's gonna get worse than this. And unless something is changed, unless we adopt new technology, we allow drivers to earn more money, don't expect the best customer service next year. It's gonna get bad and it's gonna get worse. So I just want to make a point with this. Thank you.
Mr. Hadoyan?
Yes, I honestly don't know what's the point of this. I mean, if you get up a call, you can always reject it or accept it. So, I mean, if you're at the airport on the queue and they have a call, just don't.
Mr. Weiser?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this issue here is rather, I think people have to be candid in the sense that in order for anything to work in business, I've learned that in order to make money, you have to put in money into something. And that's a theme you hear out through the business industry. Having said that, call centers are not going to survive without the participation of drivers. And I think I hear a universal theme here that drivers are saying we're not making enough money. And then we're also not charging probably the correct amount to attract more business. So I think if we're going to move along and get to a different destination in the sense of trying to be more attractive to our community, is we have to rethink our product to compete. And I think if we're becoming fragmented in the sense that we're trying to get as many free things as we can because the economy is not as well and we want to be in a better place economically, we're not going to get there the way we're doing it. If we're cutting, if anything, MTS proved something rather quickly here. In order for MTS to survive and continue to provide the service, they went out and they said, we're going to cut some of our services. We're going to allow certain things so that the industry thrives. Well, I think they played their role and then we have to play our role. And our role isn't cutting up the pie and making it smaller and smaller for our expenses. It's how do we thrive in a competitive marketplace? Because the solution is we want to cut our costs, which I think everybody's trying to cut costs. Certain costs are permanent. Why is one call center charging more than another? Operationally, I don't operate 24 hours anymore because I found out that the city doesn't operate certain things 24 hours anymore. If anything, COVID demonstrated certain things that you can wait till the next day to conduct business because there's times in our business where there's no service provided. We have a person that's piloting a ship that is asleep. So I think there are some things that we have to rethink and relook at because my call center would not survive at 24 hours. Places that are bigger call centers, most of them are automated. They don't have a person 24 hours. They have a person business hours when they can call it another time. I don't think we have the man hours that we can pay for anymore to sustain any call center. Some people that pay $25 a month, that's less than $1 a day for the service. I mean, what do you expect for that $25? You're talking about a call center that's trying to comply with the regulations. How do you man 24 hours staff 4 persons with $25 if you have only 100 cabs on your call center? You can't do it. So there's a lot of things drivers are saying they can't do. There's a lot of things call centers can't do without the technology, without the support financially. So MTS has to relook at it and say, okay, am I gonna require certain things or am I gonna be flexible on certain things? Because at this point, I don't think every call center has the revenue to go forward with technology. And in some cases, some of the technology is essential to provide better service. So I don't think this is the end of this. I don't think it should be. There's a lot of information here that hasn't been covered. There are some statements that I don't agree with certain drivers that say, I don't get any calls. It's a choice people make. 75% made a choice. They're at the airport. They're not servicing calls. The drivers that I have that do calls, that's all they live by is calls. Yellow Cab does the same thing. They rely on people that are willing to pay for their service because they get a return on it. They make money. They have found a way to thrive. I think the people that don't follow a business model that gives them at least the opportunity to succeed on that day isn't by waiting in line for 3-6 hours. That's not a thriving business plan. There are other models that we're using to survive, but we have found that there's drivers that are high performers that have found a way to make money in this industry. That's why they're still there. But I also see in the next item we're going to cover on the amount of permits that are out there. There's a limit. Our pie has pretty much shrunk. It's cut up and sliced by all the competitive market players that are out there, which is a lot of them. Not only taxis and Ubers and Lyfts, you got every other model that you can think of. So I think this is the model. This is a conversation that we're going to have to continue so we can get it right. Otherwise, like some of you said, we're not going to be around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Royce. All right, we will conclude this item. Lenny, is it possible for you to combine your presentations for 8 and 9, items 8 and 9?
Certainly, Chair. However, the next item would be agenda number 8 on the for hire vehicle industry emergent topic between taxicabs and transportation network companies. Is that what you're referring to? Just combine that in the our operations update?
Yeah, so the item 8, the for hire vehicle administration operations update, and then the topics for next the next meeting. If
Certainly, but the next item, Chair, is item number 8. Oh, I apologize. 7. My apologies.
okay. Yeah. Do you think we have time for 7? Yeah. I think.
Okay, it's here. It's agenda number 7. I apologize for the typo.
This agenda item and the others. One of these agenda items.
Sorry, I got confused. Yes, Chair, I can go through this one pretty quick. I think this was pretty important. And then the operation updates, as we could refer that to the committee to check them out on their own. It's just an item, if that's okay with you.
That works for me.
Earl, just a quick background on the partnerships between taxicabs and TNCs. We my apologies to the committee, but I'll do it verbally if that's okay. As far as this item, we provided an analysis on what San Francisco is doing in terms of the partnership in the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Authority, and the potential benefits of what's going on up there that we see for this potential partnership once it comes down here to San Diego. If it does, is that for drivers, it increased businesses for them to choose to participate in this program by having access to the TNC market share. It also allows drivers to continue operating as a taxi cab and therefore having access to passengers via street hails, staging, and designated taxi cab stands. There's also benefits for passengers to provide them an additional way to book a taxi cab trip, as currently not all of them have access to organizations that utilize technologies, and provides them with an extra access to a safe and regulated on-demand transportation option. I'm glad that Mr. Majid is here. This item originally was brought up on the request of Yellow Cab, as they are the ones who are potentially looking into entering into this partnership. The program premise, again, just to refresh the committee, is that all trips that are regulated, all trips would be considered taxi cab trips, are they as they would be provided by a duly permitted taxi cab trip vehicle by a permitted taxi cab driver. Third-party trips, which would be the ones generated through Uber, would be based on TNC pricing on their model and not the traditional maximum rate of fare. That's the only difference. Drivers would have the option to accept or decline the trip without the risk of being penalized. The program premise is that the passenger will always have the option and ability to request a taxi cab trip pricing using the traditional maximum rates of fare by either contacting a taxi cab dispatch service or directly requesting a taxi cab trip via street hail or at a designated taxi cab stand. To finalize this item, based on the feedback that we received at this point, the potential concepts to enable this partnership to take place is to add possible ordinance 11 provisions that would require taxi cab trips that are booked to a third-party trip provider to comply with all MTS ordinance number 11 revisions. Certain ordinance number 11 provisions related to taxi cab maximum rates of fare would be exempt from this because those trips would fall under the upfront fare pricing without regard to the authorized maximum rates of fare, which could be higher or lower than the taxi cab maximum rate of fare if the trip was originally booked through a third-party provider. And also certain ordinance 11 will be provisions will be exempt relating to the provision of refusing a fare, meaning that drivers would be authorized to accept or decline the trip that was originally booked through a third-party provider at their discretion. Finally, we're contemplating adding a provision to define a third-party trip provider to mean a business entity that utilizes an e-hail app, such as Uber or Lyft or any other e-hail app, to book and provide upfront pricing to a prospective passenger without regard of the maximum rates of fare. A third-party trip provider may not also be an MTS authorized dispatch service for purposes of this definition. The next steps, we request feedback on the above concepts to enable this partnership to take place in the future. And for hire vehicle administration staff will then finalize these concepts into recommended revisions for the next meeting on November 15th. That concludes this item. I will.
Thank you, Lenny. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do.
Okay.
Izzy Ayala. In the interest of time, we're going to limit public comments to 1 minute.
There was only really one way Uber worked with taxis. And this years ago, and then they're still doing it today, where you can use the Uber app, look for Uber taxi, depending on what market you are, hit Uber taxi and get a taxi. We created a second way where you hit Uber X and you may get a taxi. So that's a huge difference from a taxi perspective because there's not many people looking to get a taxi on the Uber app. We have been conditioned, brainwashed, to hit Uber X. We believe that that's the most convenient, cheapest option in Uber. So when you hit that, you get one of our taxis. That's a game changer. That's what we've done. We're the only one in the world today that has done that. Thank you.
William Alozi.
Sorry, once again, this is a big partnership and it has a lot of things that should be taken into consideration. I believe most of us, the taxi drivers, prefer our independence, and that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. It's been a long time. We've been out there, we value that independence. Greater majority of them have keys. They want to be around their keys and do their things with their keys. So that said, I want, if you're looking into the partnership with TNCs or whatever, okay, with the TNCs or whatever their name is, we should have a safeguard for these drivers or the drivers in question, because arbitrarily the TNCs dismiss you without any option. I, for one, had been with them for years and decided to stick with my taxi cab. So trying to force me alongside with them by this unholy marriage is something that should be treated on with caution. Because for the fact I was alleged that a customer made allegation that I was driving under influence. I'm 60 years. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. And there has never been any evidence as to how the customer made the allegation and they're sticking around against me. So please take it into consideration.
Thank you, sir. All right, that was the final public comment.
That concludes.
Okay, so given where we're at in terms of time, Lenny, what's the best way? We're not gonna have a robust conversation in 4 minutes on this item. So what's the best way for the committee members to communicate with you about their feedback? Based their feedback on the presentation that you provided in such a way that will allow for the discussion on November 15th that we'd like to have.
Via email, you can call me, or you're always welcome to come into my office. I can address each question.
Peter?
We would consider that option too.
Yeah, that sounds good. Obviously maintaining, yeah, order and making sure that we're compliant with the Brown Act. So we'll need to make sure it's not a quorum of this group. But that sounds like a great idea. Mr. Gurm quickly, and then Mr. Majid.
Okay, I'm gonna do quickly. It's not on our agenda, but I'm asking Mr. Anderson, if we have.
So Mr. Gurm,
Shall I finish?
just because we're so tight on time, I want to definitely make sure we stick to the item that's agendized here, okay? Thank you. Mr. Majid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't get a chance to comment at the last meeting when we had a very robust discussion and we had the fire and the yellow. But anyways, yes, this is coming. As far as the gentleman that just spoke or everybody else, this is a business decision for every business to make. And if it fits your business model, if you think it's to your benefit, do it. If it's not, nobody's forcing anybody to do it. Our plan is moving right along. Plan is to launch this in LA, Orange County, and San Diego simultaneously. And we're at the very final stages. It should be sometime in the very near future.
Thank you, Mr. Majid. So Lenny, if you wouldn't mind following up with the committee members to see who'd like to participate in an ad hoc committee or a working group, however we want to describe it, that will allow for substantial feedback in such a way that we can have a more robust conversation on November 15th. That would be great. Thank you, Lenny. All right. So we're going to table 8 and 9 because we can, I think 8 folks can refer to the materials that were posted.
Correct.
We will table item 9. Do a quick call to see if there's anyone part of the committee who'd like to share anything out that seems essential to share out today. And if not, then I will remind folks that our next committee meeting is November 15th, 2023 and at 2 p.m. and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Oh, Mr. Wesa, did you have something?
I was just going to recommend that if we have a robust agenda, we should try to consider that for the next time. How many items and bullet point?
Thank you.